Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And the Giants got their defensive coordinator in Wink Martindale. And they got a couple position coaches. We have an interview with Ken McCusick of Film Study Ravens, which is a really good interview. He actually went on another Giants show, but we interviewed him first, so suck it to two of our friends. But we're talking about Wink Martindale and the two position coaches. Justin, how you doing?
Bobby Skinner. Ton of stuff that's still going on in Giants land. Feel like it's going to slow down after this episode. Super Bowl's this Sunday. Excited for that. Just going to relax and enjoy football one more time until the month of September, and that's kind of sad. How are you?
Good. Like you said, I'm starting to get into draft stuff. I watched Aiden Hutchinson today, and he wins every single rep versus Penn State, so that was exciting, even though the Giants can't get him. But getting ready again. And Wink Martindale, we got a good defensive coordinator. Like the most qualified guy that was available for the job outside of Vic Fangio, who really wasn't available. It seems like he wasn't going to take a DC job. He's taking the year off unless he got a head coaching gig. So we're going to get into all of that. But first, this episode was brought to you by three special people. We got Alec Kasiski. Philadelphia Collins.
Ooh, good job.
I can't do the Philadelphia Collins burp. And then Jonathan and Zwerling. Do you think there's really someone with the last name Zweriling?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, I know at least one of those people's fake names, maybe two. Justin, who are these people, these imposters?
These imposters went to patreon.com/talkinggiants, $2 a month plus some other tiers. You get an opportunity to watch a show and hang out with us live, which we're going to get to the dog days of the off season. So, Bobby Skinner, maybe we'll have a little bit of time. We're going to be talking with our Patreon chat. You can ask us questions. Like today we were talking about our Simple Man Radio episode and who we would have dinner with out of people who are dead.
Not Hitler. Shout out Jonathan Allen.
Not him, dude. I don't want to have dinner with him. And you get an opportunity to win some shirt raffles, and Bobby Skinner will send you some magnet stickers in the mail. Patreon.com/TalkingGiants. Thanks to our favorite people in the world.
All right, Justin, the Giants have their head coach, OC, DC, and their special teams coordinator. And just before we get into the nitty-gritty on Wink Martindale, we kind of are pulling from the best teams in the NFL. We got our head coach from Buffalo, and we got our GM from Buffalo. That's good synergy right there, right? We get an offensive coordinator from the Chiefs, who have been the best sustained offense over the last 4 or 5 years. And then we get our defensive coordinator, not only from the Ravens, but the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, who has had the team that's had the best defense over the past 4 years. And by the numbers, the best one from 2018 to 20 before they had a bunch of injuries. So, we're pulling from the best, and we're going to talk more about Wink Martindale today, but, you got to feel good about the coordinators for this staff. Position coaches, it's a lot harder to judge. But the coordinator spots, man, you got to feel really good about what the Giants are doing.
Absolutely. And I think there was a little bit of worry towards the beginning. Oh my gosh, we got the GM from Buffalo. We got the offensive coordinator that's now our head coach from Buffalo. How many guys are we just going to be getting from Buffalo? It looked like Ken Dorsey for a hot sec was also going to be from Buffalo, which I would have loved if Ken Dorsey came along too. But since that point, since we basically found out, okay, it's not going to be Ken Dorsey, everybody else has kind of come from different backgrounds. Sure, their paths might have crossed at some point, whether it's, Dable just brought Tony Soprano Jr. and they were...
You got to get that. We got to get that right.
What did I say, Soprano?
Yeah.
Whoops. Serrano. Tony Serrano Jr. and
Sporano.
So I said that Serrano. Though their paths crossed.
You're still getting it wrong.
What am I saying?
You said Serrano. It's Sporano with a P.
Damn it, Sperano. Tony Sperano Jr., their paths crossed when Dable was an offense coordinator in Miami. Getting from great places while also not just getting solely people that like the back of your hand.
Yeah, Wink Martindale, there was no crossover between the two.
No.
None.
Yeah.
And again, Wink Martindale, let's dive into Wink Martindale. He was the most qualified guy that was available. Vic Fangio wasn't available. He had the best defense in the NFL from 2018 to 20.
Can I give you stats on how and why they were the best defense from 2018 to 2020?
Go for it.
We'll talk about 2021 because I'm sure that's what everybody's screaming. Well, what happened then? What happened then? We'll talk about it. Wink Martindale's defense from 2018 to 2020. Number 1 in the following categories. Yards per game, points per game, opponent's completion percentage, yards per pass attempt, defensive touchdowns, second half points allowed. They were number 2 in the National Football League. In opponent QB rating, fourth down stops, third down percentage, least amount of explosive plays allowed. They were number 3 in QB hits.
Yeah, and they've been a dominant defense. And now it's going to be a totally different style. Like we all know Wink Martindale likes to blitz. His blitz rate the last 4 years was 6 this past season, which they got very injured on the back half. And then the 3 years before that were all first. And there was, in 2019, they did it over 50% of the time, which is just unreal.
54.4% in 2019, which was around 9% more than the second place team in the National Football League. This dude likes to, the phrase manufacture pressure. I think that's what Wink Martindale is kind of looking to do. And there's a quote which he kind of talks about that.
And listen, I wanted Wink Martindale after that season. We were coming off James Betcher, who had man coverage, corners and a roster made to really blitz, and he wouldn't blitz. I wanted Wink Martindale that year, and it's kind of cool to look back.
You wanted him as head coach.
Yeah, which is my last two coaching hires. I wanted Wink Martindale and Brian Dable. I got both of them. Happy for me. Pat myself on the back, even though I've kind of simmered down on Wink Martindale compared to the 2020 offseason. But again, his identity is blitzing. So it's going to be different. It's going to be very different than what Patrick Graham did with the Giants. It's very different than if they would have went and got Sean Desai from the Bears or someone from the Vic Fangio tree or even Leslie, like a Bills guy. So it's going to be very different. But it does, and we talked about this with Ken McCusick in the interview, it does change. He does adapt. It's not simply just lining up in cover 0, blitz. It's mainly going to be in cover 1 and cover 3, that single high safety looks. And then when they went against some of the elite receivers, they would do cover 2, cover 4, and try and double guys more often. But again, they're going to stack the box. They're going to give you unfavorable fronts to run against. Even this past year when their defense was bad, they were the number 1 rush defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
Now they were the 32nd pass defense, so that's not that's not the type of balance that you want. But again, they were top 10 in those categories every year, the years before that. So it's going to be a lot of blitzing. It's going to be a lot of disguised look. It's going to be a lot of different types of formations. Again, this referencing stuff from the interview, there's going to be times where you don't have an inside linebacker on the field. You're going to have 4 outside linebackers. You're going to be running a lot more dime package, where it's 6 DBs on the field. There's going to be times where the safety is the one running the show and not the inside linebacker. And there's times where I was very surprised. So I went and watched the 2020 divisional playoffs, Bills versus Ravens. So it's like, okay, I want to see Brian Dable versus Wink Martindale. That game, they didn't blitz. The Ravens barely blitzed. They lined up now they ran man coverage. They lined up in that cover 1, but they didn't blitz the Bills, and they held that Bills offense to 10 points. And in 3 matchups against Brian Dable, they held him to no more. They scored no more than 17 points. So Wink Martindale is definitely a totally different identity than what a Patrick Graham type coach would do, but it does adjust week to week, adding new plays, adding new formations, lining up in different fronts. But the basis of it is blitzing and playing man coverage, which personnel is going to have to change to get to that point where that's really thriving, Justin.
Yeah. Some more stats and just some, thoughts that I kind of got compiling the stats. One of the things that I wanted to figure out is what went wrong in 2021 from a stats standpoint. Obviously, it's the injuries. Well, how did the injuries impact the way that teams were able to be successful against the Ravens? And that's one of the things that I really tried to do. And it was one really, really common thread, but I'll get to that common thread. Here's the things that were common, even despite a lackluster 2021 season by the Ravens defense. Wink Martindale's defense does not have a lot of plays that are run against them. They had the 6th least number of plays run against them in 2021, the 11th least in 2020, the least amount in 2019, and the 8th least in 2018. They had the 2nd least percentage of drives ending in a score in 2018, 7th least in 2019, 3rd least in 2020, and 8th least in 2021. So even though the Ravens defense, a lot of points, a lot of big plays, they still had drives where, they were top half of the league in not in percentage of drives that are ending in a score. That is a positive thing as well. Also, one of the main things that were different, their pressure rate has been historically pretty good. It was mid-pack in 2019, but Wink Martindale, I think, is a guy that cares a lot more about QB hits and pressures than sacks. Yes. 24th in 2021. So that's not necessarily their winning formula. If you're going to be bringing a blitz at such a high rate, you better get home and you better hit the quarterback. Also a common theme, Bobby Skinner. This is probably something that may be a little surprising, or it may not surprise you. Even though the Ravens defense was bad this year, especially when you compare it to 2018 to 2020, teams still love to throw the ball against the Baltimore Ravens. They still did have the best rushing defense this year, but 2021, third highest pass rate against. 2020, fourth highest pass rate in the National Football League against. 2019, sixth most. 2018, fifth most. So the only really drastic thing statistically that I found that was different from 2018 to 2020 than what made 2021 different, it was the explosive plays. The explosive plays killed them this year. 2018, they were 9th in the National Football League in least amount of explosive pass plays. 2019, they were 11th. 2020, they were 1st. They were number 1. 2021, they were 31st. Second worst in the National Football League. And that is what killed them this year. They weren't on the field for a lot of plays, but the yards per play was significant. And even though teams couldn't run the ball, well, if you make them one-dimensional and they're throwing the ball and they have success throwing the ball, that is the worst thing. That is a worst thing that a quality of defense can have. It's just not being able to stop the pass and not being able to stop the explosive pass play. So I'm going to get your thoughts before I give more of mine.
Well, yeah, and that's where, playing that man coverage kind of screwed them, is because they didn't have enough good man coverage corners, which is like you can't scheme a ton of good man coverage. You kind of just have to have good man corners. But I will say, in all of that, in 2021, they had the 19th ranked defense scoring-wise. I know maybe points per play and points per drive probably is a little higher than that because you mentioned, the ball control of the Ravens offense. But at the end of the day, they were 19th in defense, which isn't good, but it wasn't, they didn't, they weren't 30th, and he had a track record of being in those top 3 teams, in the top 3. The 3 years before they were second, third, and second in those, and they were in those same spots as far as yards as well. So it wasn't just in points. Some of those years they were first in yards. So again, it's blitz heavy, and like you said with the run stuff, teams don't want to run against the Ravens. Why? Because they're going to load that box and they're going to give you some weird fronts that you're not really comfortable running against. And then they're going to line up in cover 0, which means we're going to line up as many guys on the line of scrimmage. We're going to play man coverage across the board. And guess what that breeds? That breeds disguised blitzes. That breeds simulated pressures where you're showing a cover 0 blitz, but you're popping guys out. And that means you're creating one-on-ones where you usually want to have one-on-ones and like a 6 guys blocking 4, or it's going to have free rushers because they're going to screw up the protection because they don't know exactly who's coming. And it has to be respected because guess what? They run the cover 0 blitz more than any team in the NFL besides the Dolphins, So they it's not just we're doing a disguised look. No, there's times where they're coming at your ass. And there's times where they'll come at your ass play after play after play. I remember Eli referenced it in the, that Monday Night Football game against the Raiders. He's like, they're running 0 like every other single play. So again, it takes chances. But again, they take chances, and like you said, we're the best, near the best in the league at stopping the big play. Yeah. So again, there's going to have to be needs for personnel changes. I think this scheme fits. Adoree Jackson, I think it'll fit. Aaron Robinson's going to fit. James Bradbury, I wouldn't be as fast to move on from James Bradbury as other people want, but it is interesting to see what he will be. But also, I think Bradbury will be a lot better in man coverage if we're getting to the QB. Where Bradbury's struggled in man coverage is when we're not getting to the QB, and he's got to sustain that coverage for longer than you usually need when you're put in man coverage situations. You
mentioned the points per drive, how the more advanced in terms of rates will say that the Ravens defense was worse. They were 11th best this year in points per drive. The 11th least, and again, so I had such a difficulty throughout all this weekend, and after Wink was hired, I'm looking through everything that I like to look at, all the metrics and all the crap that I like to look at. That's how I kind of base like how good is a defense and how is a defense performing, or how is an offense performing against this defense? Well, what are they really bad at? And really, the only thing that I could find that was substantially really, really bad was the explosive plays. Now that's huge. That's a huge red flag, red mark. It doesn't matter how often you force 3 and outs. It doesn't matter how often you force field goals, whatever. If you allow those explosive plays, it's just going to boost an offense. It's going to boost an offense, and it's going to make the game a lot more harder to win when you allow those big plays. But there's more of a track record where when Wink Martindale has a healthy team around him, they also had very, very talented rosters defensively. They lost that in 2021, and then you saw the results. I mean, they lost it bad too, really bad.
Yeah, they got dealt a bad, which I think we even mentioned this during the season in our mailbag pause when people were saying, well, injuries aren't an excuse for the Giants. It's like, well, partly, but also like, and there's people reference the Ravens. It's like, well, the Ravens haven't necessarily they've done better than the Giants because they have better depth, but like the Ravens have fallen way below what their standard is. Like injuries were an excuse for the Ravens. Yeah. Now the Giants just sucked. Like their backups were the worst of the worst, but that's a different point. So, but it is going to be interesting to see how this merges, at least year one, because you don't have the edge room that Wink Martin wants to have. You got I think the secondary is actually in a pretty good spot where Logan Ryan's a safety. You could put in man coverage. He played corner. McKinney, I feel like fits really well. Ken McCusick even said in the interview, he's like, I really wanted Xavier McKinney. I didn't want Patrick Queen. So it's going to be interesting to see how this merges from a Patrick Graham defense and a Wink Martindale, which over the past 2 years have been polar opposites.
So I have a really good quote, and then we'll talk maybe about specifically how we can see the Giants attacking what positions they're going to target, how they value certain players. I want as many cover CBs as you can have because the game is a passing game now. I think sacks are one of the most superficial rankings there is. My philosophy is I'd rather have a corner that can cover than a guy who can rush because I'll get us guys who can hit the QB. So again, that's why I start off the show saying manufacture pressure, where I think that's almost like a buzzword. Well, what does that exactly mean? I do think Wink Martindale, based off this quote, and then looking at, hey, they let guys like Yannick Ngakoue walk. They let Matthew Judon walk without, they traded for Ngakoue, but they let him walk. They let guys come in the building and then they go. And they draft guys like, away from Penn State. And it's like, well, this guy's kind of raw and he can't really, doesn't do much, but he comes out and he's somewhat productive for them. It's his responsibility to get to the quarterback, but he needs to trust that back-end secondary to take care of their business. And that has really kind of shifted and changed my priorities on kind of what I feel the Giants need. And I'm still like in this limbo of really wanting that elite pass rusher, but does Wink Martindale need that elite pass rusher? Like Patrick Graham, I thought really needed it, and it would have been really cool for him to have it. Does Wink Martindale need that? Or does he need just athletes?
He definitely doesn't need it like a Fangio. It's crazy how Graham transitioned to, like, in a sense, like the too high bend don't break defense, which that's not what he was before, But like those defenses are made by their elite pass rushers, like having that one. Now Fangio was better at scheming up pressure, but like Staley, who was with the Rams and the Chargers, like the Chargers weren't a good defense, but like that Rams defense isn't nowhere near as good, able to do what it does without Aaron Donald in the middle.
Right. I mean, saying Chargers got Joey Bosa too, so
yeah. Now, do you have like much more on Wink? Because I actually want to have a conversation that isn't necessarily necessary for today about James Bradberry.
Yeah, my mind now goes to the players. I'm excited for Julian Love because if they're going to be running the single high stuff, Julian Love goes back to that 2019 role that he had, and where he's like in the box, maybe, right? Because I think Jabril Peppers is probably going to be moved on from.
Peppers has got to be gone.
Jabril Peppers, I mean, in a way,
he's coming off an injury too.
If he wasn't coming off of an injury and he had an extra year on his contract, how pumped would we be for Jabril Peppers that he gets to go back in the box again? But I think Julian Love can easily fill that role. I mean, I think his best quality as a defensive player is his tackling. Not necessarily his coverage. So I'm excited to see what he can do in this defense. Xavier McKinney, yes. Yeah, so let's have a conversation about Bradbury and whoever.
Well, this is just more about cap space in general because the Giants are getting ready to clear cap space. I'm starting to get a little bothered by the idea of moving on from guys like Bradbury, Blake.
I know.
Even guys like Slayton and Gates have been thrown in there, and Saquon not being the automatic number one on that list.
Correct.
That's going to frustrate me so much. And let's just add it up to $7 million. If you got Nick Gates 2.5, Slayton 2.5, and I don't know, one other $1 million guy. It's like I would rather have all three of those guys over Saquon Barkley, and especially all three of those guys together. And I would much rather have James Bradbury than Saquon Barkley. I would much rather have Blake Martinez than Saquon Barkley. And now, don't get me wrong. Maybe those guys get traded and they'll have more trade value than Saquon Barkley. I don't know if Blake would because of just persona around the league. Because there's from his Green Bay days, Bradbury definitely probably would have a higher trade market than Saquon.
And how much money is Isn't Bradbury getting $21 million this year?
They would save $13 million cap space.
It's all about the roster bonus. And I was talking with, Patricia Trainee has done work on the cap space stuff. And, it's the roster bonus that's really going to kill the Giants. And that's partially why if they were to move on from Bradbury, it's to avoid that roster bonus that probably, kick in new league year, March. So.
But don't move on from James Bradbury and keep Saquon Barkley.
I agree. Yeah.
That would be so frustrating. Saquon, again, not to get too mailbaggy on you, but Saquon Barkley should be the easiest no-brainer move to move on from. We talked about it in mailbag pod after mailbag pod, and it's not personal against Saquon Barkley. I root for him. I watch his highlights. I think he can make it. This past year he didn't, but he does make a difference from a spot where you don't make a ton of difference, at the running back spot. He did make differences. He did add wins to the Giants, even though the Giants didn't get a lot of wins. But they're kind of in a no-win situation with him, where if he balls out, well, then you got to pay him. Then if he comes in and balls, which he's very capable of doing, then you got to pay him. And I don't think any of us want to be in a spot where we're paying Saquon Barkley. And you don't want to. If you want to trade him, you shouldn't wait until the trade deadline. Stop. That's not going to happen. And then what happens if he gets hurt again? Or if he sucks, then you just let him walk for essentially nothing. I just feel like we're in a no-win while we're rebuilding to keep Saquon. If we were a playoff contender, Super Bowl contender, I would understand it. But this year is very clearly about rebuilding. Saquon Barkley should be the easiest one to move on from. And he might have some of the best trade value just off of his name alone.
Yeah, and this is the NFL where you're going to have your most value in the offseason where you can come in and have a program with the team versus, if you're traded week 7 or when, the week before the trade deadline. Okay, great. That's just how I think the NFL works. It's not like baseball or basketball where you can just step in and be like, all right, I'm here.
And you're going to tell Saquon Barkley, who's balling at the like that would be the best case scenario is if he balls the first half of the season and you trade him. So you're going to take a Saquon who's playing really well and you're going to trade him at the deadline. Yeah. We forget that these are human beings and that's not how stuff works in real life.
Here's my rebuttal to you about Bradbury, though. I 100% agree with you about the whole prioritizing. Hey, let's get all these guys out of here that actually contribute to the team, and somehow that we work that out to keep Saquon, who I'm sorry did not contribute to the team in 2021. I love Bradbury. He's not a great fit for this Wink defense. He's not. I mean, I made the observation during the season that whenever Bradbury makes his game-changing plays, it is when he is covering the men in his zone, not trailing guys in man coverage. He got beat last year on trailing guys in man coverage on crossing routes and on streaks down the field. That's when he got beat, and they were bad, and they were really bad plays. But the plays that he made that were great, making plays on the football, jumping routes, interceptions, that is when he is anticipating routes and he's able to sit in his zone, make a play on the football, make a play on a ball carrier. That's when he's best. And I don't know if Wink Martindale is going to put him in that same position this year. I don't know, and I don't think so.
We'll see. Now, James Bradbury, I don't want to act like James Bradbury is bad in man coverage. He's just much better fit in those zone schemes.
But are you going to pay somebody
over?
I would be
I'm willing to trade Bradbury, but I don't want to cut him. Bradbury has trade value.
Yeah, are you going to pay someone north of $20 million, including that roster bonus, to be not a top-tier corner?
Who's to say that he won't be, though?
Because he's not a solely man coverage corner, and that's what Wink is going to run. It's tough, I know. It's so tough.
But Wink runs a lot of cover 3, which looks like man coverage, and we did that in 2020.
And we did
James
that in
Bradbury was elite.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
So it's I'm not getting rid of James Bradbury for nothing, is what I'm saying. If you want to trade him, he's going to have good trade value. Then do it. But I'm not just cutting James Bradbury just to clear cap space.
That's fair. Yeah.
If you want to make an argument for Blake, okay, maybe. But James Bradbury is too good of a player to just cut for cap space.
Yeah. And that makes me worry because I do think that there's a good chance that both Bradbury and Blake are gone. So again, where does this leave the defense, and where does this leave certain roster decisions that they make this offseason?
Yeah, we'll see. But we got a lot of time to talk about that. Let's quickly go through the 2 new positions. There's another position coach. We don't know what he's going to be coaching yet. And we're going to talk about these position coaches, and Justin's going to read an ad. By the way, John Boy called me. Should I call him back live on air?
Why not?
It's probably something important. He doesn't call me for no reason.
Yeah. Okay, Bobby Skinner is...
Hope I'm not in trouble.
How do you view love in your life? Do you like love?
I do.
Do you believe in love?
After love, I do.
Do you believe in life after love?
You ain't love. It feels so good. All right, go ahead. Read the damn ad.
So did you know, also, little fun fact here, most babies are made during the wintertime. Did you know that?
I'm in Florida. That doesn't apply to me.
Well, I looked it up before we recorded this show. I figured it out. And Valentine's Day, February 14th, it's going to be a crisp, cool 28 degrees high, 17 degrees low. So guess what? February 13th, it's National Trim Those Pubes Day. National Trim Those Pubes Day. And you can do that with Manscaped. Roses are red, violets are blue. Don't let a wild pube wreck you. Valentine's Day is just around the corner. It's going to be cold, so you're going to want to spend it inside. You're going to want to be nice and cozy. Spend it with our sponsors, Manscaped, or at least spend it the night before Valentine's Day with Manscaped. They're here for you with the best tools to get your balls ready for this special occasion. This V-Day, it's time to join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com, use code GIANTS for 20% off plus free shipping. What is this? I just grabbed a random product, 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. Have it on my dresser because I already have another bottle in the shower that I'm currently using, but I have this as a backup. Also have the body wash that is infused, smells just like my cologne. It's a perfect complement to that. Don't forget to smell good. Not only around your balls, they made a secret Manscaped refined cologne. So I got to get the cologne. I have other cologne. Got to get the refined Manscaped cologne. It'll complement your collection with smell perfection. So what I want you to do is I want you to get 20% off and free shipping with code GIANTS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Then use code GIANTS. Join Cupid and shoot your arrow with Manscaped this Valentine's Day. Use code GIANTS. Get ready for Valentine's Day. Get laid. How about that? Just going to go out and say it. Get laid.
Vic Fangio is going to meet with the 49ers, so maybe I was totally misguided in my Vic Fangio guessing. All right, let's talk about these position coaches real quick. Andre Patterson, the D-line coach, has been the Vikings D-line coach for the last 8 years, and then the last couple years he's been added assistant head coach and then co-defensive coordinator. This seems like a slam dunk hire, and again, it's hard to judge positional coaches, but he is loved. This guy is loved and adored by his peers, and including his players. And, you know, he's worked I listened to some interviews with him, the way he talks about run fits and, you know, the way, like, yeah, you play a guy like Kyler Murray different than you do Lamar Jackson, which isn't the most deep stuff, but, like, he's out, like, he puts his stuff out there and is really honest and seems like just a really humble guy. And the Vikings have been top 5 in sacks 3 of the last 4 years, and most of that generated from the defensive line. When you watch the Vikings D-line, they are very powerful and they use their hands really well. Like, they really bring their hands to the party, and I feel like that's something that is a coaching, like, hey, hands. I feel like that's a big coaching thing. And just like, let's look at an example with the Giants. The Giants signed Fede Odenigbo, $1 million guaranteed. Our edge room was trashed, and he didn't even make the team. Andre Patterson was able to get 7.5 sacks out of that guy in one single season.
Oh, that was a mic drop. Right there. Yeah, Andre Patterson. I feel like every coaching staff needs to have like a resident old dude. And Burton Burns was the resident old dude.
He was too old.
Previous coaching staff. Patterson's 61, but he's legit. He started as a graduate assistant in 1982 with Montana. And he's every single year, he's been working in football. Started with the Patriots in 97 as a defensive line coach. Was with 1998, 1999 with the Vikings. Eventually makes his way back with the Vikings in 2014. And he's literally been their D-line coach since. And then he was defensive coordinator in 2021.
Vikings fans wanted him to get like a head coaching interview and like be the head coach.
Yeah, saw some comments in the Schefter tweet about saying how this was like their best positional coach that they had on the previous staff. So good, cool.
Yeah, and I was looking through like the videos and stuff, and I was looking at some like people who do Viking stuff, and they were talking about like why Andre Patterson deserves a shot at head coach. You know, not give it to him, but like deserves to at least be interviewed and taken as a serious interview for the job. And we're getting this guy as our D-line coach. Like if Wink Martindale would go down, like he would be my like, okay, let's bring it, let's give him a shot at DC. Like he's at least done the co-DC role with the Vikings, maybe Jerome Henderson as well. But yeah, he seems like, I mean, he just is loved by everyone who's been around him.
And it
doesn't always mean you're a good coach, but to be that long and to be around that long and still be loved like that, it does mean something.
He worked for Mike Zimmer, Mike Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell, Dennis Green, Butch Davis, Pete Carroll, and Dave Campo.
Butch Davis, baby. So yeah, Andre Patterson, welcome to the New York Giants, and get these guys using their hands. I'm excited to see what he does with Leonard Williams.
Yes, that's really the big thing is, you know, can Dexter break out? Can he get back to what he was doing in 2020? Can Leonard Williams regain the form, you know, in the year 2020? You know, that's going to be, you know, we're talking about these positional coaches. Yeah, they're good. They have experience. For me, kind of with all these positional coaches, besides O-line coach, because you have to analyze them a little bit more, let's see players develop a little bit more. Let's see these players step up and perform like they're actually going to perform. Because I feel like we almost did the same thing with Joe Judge's positional coaches. Like, yeah, look at where this guy came from, blah, blah, blah. Let me see it. I'll judge you how your players play.
Yeah, and again, it's hard to judge. Even if they don't play well, it's hard to judge a position coach, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I remember the 2019 O-line. It's like, Hal Hunter is a horrible O-line coach, which he very well may be, but it's like, I don't know how much I can blame this on Hal Hunter because Nick Gates popped in as a backup and played tackle better than Nate Solder did. You know, and that guy went from a UDFA to this. So does Hal Hunter get credit for that? Like, or is it a lot of times it's just players? But again, it's hard to judge those guys now. And then they got a wide receiver coach, Mike Groh, spelled Groh, he's the Colts wide receiver coach the last 2 years. He was the Eagles OC for 2 years, and fun fact, the Eagles, the year he left, their Eagles offense went ranked from 12th to 26th, and they got more healthy. Eagles wide receiver coach in 2017, was the Rams wide receiver coach and passing game coordinator 2016. The Bears was the Bears from 2013 to 15, Alabama from 11 to 12, and then before that he was in college with Louisville as a QB coach. Virginia, he was an OC at Virginia. His dad actually was a coach for the Giants in the 90s. And the coach was the head coach at Virginia. So I couldn't find much on him. You can look at the growth of Michael Pittman Jr. with the Colts.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. I was like, was there a wide receiver? Was Michael Pittman Jr. supposed to be like a dude?
I think Michael Pittman's done good for a second-round pick. He's had 88 catches last year.
Yeah, and he
with a team that likes to run the ball and a bad QB.
In 2020, he only played in 8 games, but he had 40 catches. So
yeah, Michael Pittman's been a success. He hasn't been like a superstar, but he's been a success at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Again, hard to find stuff on these guys. I did find a quote of him talking about the value of having a diverse wide receiver group, which the New York Giants have that. Their top 2 wide receivers, Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney, assuming Sterling Shepard's not gone, and even then he would fit the role kinda because he's somewhere in the middle of those 2 guys. You're not going to find 2 more opposite top receivers than Kadarius Toney and Kenny Golladay. I mean, they're literally the exact opposite type of wide receivers. So interesting. And listen, this wide receiver group, and I don't think they're done. Like, I think there's going to be someone added to the wide receiver room. Like, I'm kind of excited to see what they can do with a competent offensive coordinator, with Brian Dable, with Mike Kafka, getting these guys up into space. Like, if there's any position group with all these new coaches that I'm the most excited for, it really is the wide receiver group. Like, I'm excited. Like, Kenny Galladay, we talked about it on our award show, but it's like, Kenny Galladay definitely had an underwhelming season, but I don't think anyone looks at that this past year like Kenny Galladay is a bad wide receiver. Or he can't be a number one wide receiver. Kadarius Toney, when he's healthy, he's electric. Slayton, I'm kind of just like over at this point, but I also don't want to throw him away for nothing. If we need to clear cap space, I get it. But I'm excited for Kenny Galladay and Kadarius Toney, and there's a chance they add someone in the third round or whenever in the draft too.
Yeah. I hope they do. And again, everything is just centered around that scheme. And common theme of this coaching staff. Again, I talked about how old Andre Patterson is. Mike Rowe. I mean, he's 50 years old, and this isn't a guy that kind of came from college. I mean, he did spend from 2001 to 2012. He was in the college ranks, but this is a guy with 2 years with offense coordinator experience, where his teams went 9-7, and he was 18th in points one year and 12th in points the next year. So, I mean, that's not dog shit, terrible offenses. This is a coaching staff that has a lot of experience, and it's qualified experience, where that is different from the previous coaching staff, where it's, hey, we're going to bring in college guys, and where everybody is going to be friends with each other, and everybody's connected in some way. Let's see if it works. That's how it's different. Will it work? I don't know. Hopefully it does, but at least it seems like, this seems like a good, sound process.
Yeah, they're not just getting their buddies.
Correct.
Which at the same time, like, there is a value in making relationships and going to guys And in fact, if Joe Judge was able to do that at OC, I think we might look at his coaching staff a little bit different.
Yeah.
But we didn't. So again, they're going and trying to get the best guys available. And then assistant offensive line coach Tony Sparano, not Soprano or Serrano, it's Sparano Jr.
Sorry.
Who was the Panthers' assistant O-line coach in 2021, was in the same spot with the Jags for the 4 previous years. Was the Bills' tight end coach from 2015 to 16. And he worked with the Jets as an intern and assistant. Was with the Dolphins in 2011 as an offensive quality control coach. That's where the Brian Dable, connection, I guess, comes from. Even though it's like, how much were those guys actually involved with each other, and how much from that relationship is this being drawn from? I don't know. But to me, this just is like, okay, Ben Wilkerson's gone. Who we don't have any. I don't think we have an opinion, positive or negative, about Ben Wilkerson, but he did survive a long time for the Giants.
He just yelled at people at training camp in Massachusetts, and I like that.
I remember him ripping guys at the Tampa Bay game when I went down towards the bottom with LPG at the end. He was ripping.
Yeah, big yeller. He's a big yeller. Yeah. Gonna miss that.
And our friend of the show, Keenan Forney, was his teammate and loved him. So we lose that connection, I guess. Tony Sparano's son. When I first saw it I was like, Tony Sparano assistant? I was like, oh, Tony Sparano passed away.
Tough.
All right, Justin. Before we get into this beautiful interview with Ken McCusick of Film Study Ravens, great interview. This is Mrs. Must Listen. The moment we've been waiting for since September is finally here. In honor of the big game, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 56, is giving new customers 56-1 odds on either team. Bet just $5 and get $280 in free bets if your team wins. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in New York, meaning you can bet from almost a third of the country. Did you know, Justin, that if you put the entire world's population in Texas living in the density of New York City, they would fit?
Sure. I think that's what makes Texas great and New York great.
If Sportsbook isn't in your state yet, play DraftKings Daily Fantasy Football Contest for Super Bowl 56. New customers can get a free shot at $1 million top prize with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use promo code JOHNBOY, and get 56-1 odds on either team. Bet just $5 and get $280 in free bets if your team wins. That's promo code JOHNBOY at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 56. 21 plus minimum age and locations requirements vary by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Void where prohibited. Gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Tennessee, Call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. And Connecticut, call 888-789-7777. Or visit ccpg.org/chat. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. We don't got a lot of time. We'll fix racism on the next episode. Here's Ken McCusick of Film Study Ravens. All right, we now welcome onto the program Ken McCusick. He covers the Ravens, does a lot of film analysis. Just talking before the show, I was like, okay, this guy knows his stuff and he's going to bring some stuff. He does film analysts. He's a film analyst for the 1057 The Fan. Ken, the Giants got Wink Martindale, and we're going to talk about ins and outs. But I want to key it off with what happened for Wink to have, three really good defenses, and then past season they were riddled by injuries, and obviously I'm sure there's things he could have done better. But what happened to there be a Ravens fallout to where a guy who was getting head coaching interviews is now, gone from the Ravens?
Yeah, surprising, I think, to Ravens analysts, and I appreciate having me on. But it's one of these things that we didn't see it coming. A lot of people saw Greg Roman, is potentially out the door, but very few people thought Martindale was at risk. He was on the last year of a 5-year contract, and so an extension would have been the normal Ravens thing to do. They normally extend their coaches before their last season. For whatever reason, somebody in the Ravens organization didn't want to do that. I assume it's with Harbaugh. If I map this back to the previous understanding with Dean Pease, Harbaugh actually forced some defensive changes on Dean Pease in his last year. And the big one was Dean Pease in his first 5 years with the Ravens played a total of 3% dime defense. Okay, in his last year with the Ravens, it was up into the 20s. So it was one of these things where Harbaugh actually made some comments during camp about how every defensive back needs to be able to move up into that dime backer position. We're going to try a lot of people there. And that kind of forced the hand. Anthony Levine, by the way, had a great year and became the Ravens' best dime back ever in 2018 in Martindale's first year. So it really played well to that strategy. Martindale, anyway, you in terms of what really went wrong, I don't think it's all Harbaugh, and I don't think it's all Wink. I think the combination of circumstances Wink said, well, I don't really want to play the last year of this contract here if I could instead coach on a 5-year deal somewhere else. So if you really don't want me, you just let me go right now. And there's a defensive rebuild coming in Baltimore that's fairly obvious with the age of this unit. So that obviously would potentially have some pain that came with it.
This past season, obviously the defense wasn't good, but he had 3 years where the defense was top notch. And the thing you look at from the outsider's point of view is they blitzed the piss out of people. Led the league in blitzing 3 years in a row. Still were 6th highest this past season. But how did Wink adjust, or did he not adjust with all these injuries? And was that part of the downfall, or was it simply just the players?
Well, there's a lot of different game plans, and game plan is definitely very much mapped to quarterback with Wink. Now, you start with a guy who's very aggressive, and you mentioned that, who definitely blitzes more than other guys do, and he basically tries to dial down blitz to the level that will protect his back end, whereas Pease before him was a guy who just liked to dial up to the minimum boiling level of pressure in order to protect his back end. Two very different philosophies, but you can deal with either. What you'll see with Wink is he really likes flexibility of outside linebackers who can drop the cover. And with Matt Judon and Tyus Bowser, he had two of the best in the NFL. Tyus Bowser, probably the single best coverage outside linebacker in the NFL. Matt Judon before him was also outstanding. So those guys really generated a lot of the pass rush versatility, a lot of the ability to rush the slot corner, safeties, or inside linebackers by their coverage ability. And so it gave the Ravens all sorts of flexibility there. I think he'll aim for that with the Giants. He'll try and get that. I don't know who the Giants' current outside linebackers are that have that ability right now. Who would that be?
Well, they tried to build him. Patrick Graham liked to do that. So he has an Azeez Ojulari, Quincy Roche, young guys, Lorenzo Carter, but he was on an expiring deal. But Azeez Ojulari is really their only edge they have right now, who is a part of the future that they can really bank on. And he's one of those guys who can drop back, and he's actually one of the best scheme fits, it seems, for us for Wink.
All right. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they go out to the market and they try and find one of these guys. They're usually very undervalued because they don't have a lot of pressures in total. They don't have a lot of sacks in total. Some people say outside linebackers hate to play for the Ravens because it'll mute their sack totals, and to have them dropping into coverage. But the Ravens may go out and the Giants may go out and find somebody to fit Martindale's scheme, because it really makes sense to do so. I think that the other thing you get with Martindale is you get a tremendous variety of schematic pressure. So I always say there are 4-man pressures and there are 4-man pressures. If you only rush the quarterback with 4, you can do it with a straight 4-0, meaning you're just showing the guys, you're showing exactly who from the down lineman. Or you can zone blitz, and you can do all sorts of other things with stunts. You can have 6 at the line of scrimmage and drop 2 of those. You can do all sorts of things to rush 4. Martindale does a lot of deceptive pressure elements. So simulated pressure you'll see a lot of. I would expect a lot of linebackers in the A gap. I think you'll see a lot of off-ball blitzing, which is a fair amount of what happens. And you see the distinction I'm making, that the blitz numbers you'll get that'll show like the Ravens blitz 35% of the time or whatever it is, all that's looking at is the straight number of pass rushers. But what's really interesting is the amount of deception that goes with that with Wink. And he'll mix that up by quarterback, and you'll see very different patterns of what they do. So if the quarterback gets rid of the ball quickly, he won't do a lot of stunts. If the quarterback is a guy who is very uncomfortable with getting moved off the spot, you'll see all sorts of deception types used, and not necessarily numbers, but lots of deception types. So it's very adaptable to the scheme.
Yeah, and I wasn't really expecting to see that with Wink. I watched, the Giants hired Brian Dable, and I kind of had from the outside in was like, okay, he's got a scheme, he sticks to it, he blitzes, he's a lot of cover 0. And I went back and watched that Bills-Ravens divisional game because let me see my head coach versus my defensive coordinator. And they didn't blitz really at all in that game, especially towards the start. There's a lot of 4-man rush, like you said, some simulated stuff, and then cover 1. I was getting ready to see all these Wink blitzes, and like you said, they're playing against a QB who held on to the ball a little longer, so they're sending stunts and simulating pressure, and then just playing man coverage, cover 1, doubling Diggs a lot. So I was kind of surprised to see that, like, oh, this guy does change more than I thought on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, it's a good point you're making about the back end, because they've done some things this year, and particularly in the division with Jamar Chase there, who exploded on him in the first game in Baltimore. They really tried a lot of Randy Moss type coverages where you put a safety directly over the top of wherever he is covered, and really try and double him that way. And they haven't done that in a long time versus pretty much any receiver, but they did it this year against Chase, and they did also against. I'm blanking on this.
I've heard Matt Bowen talk about them doing it against Devontae Adams, I think.
Yes. That's the one. So yeah, it's definitely, it happened more than once this year, and they've got some big receiving threats in the division now that the Ravens may have to keep that as part of the new defensive coach's game plan.
What goes into him stopping the run? I mean, they were first in stop and in the rush defense this year, 32nd in the pass. Obviously, the injuries have to do with that. But what goes into them stopping the run besides having some just dogs in the middle like Calais Campbell and other players?
Yeah, Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams. Brandon Williams didn't have too good a year as PFF would have scored it, but Brandon Williams, whenever he's out of there, the run defense very much suffers. So, since most NFL teams like to run out of 11 personnel now as opposed to 21 or 12, the 11 how you stop the run with a nickel is dependent upon six positional players. Your 2 inside defenders, your 2 outside linebackers, and your 2 inside linebackers. And your 2 outside linebackers, they better be able to set the edge well. And the Ravens generally have done a good job of that. Your 2 inside guys better be able to take some doubles and also penetrate as needed. And the Ravens have had that, for years and years. And Ravens, by the way, until 2017, I believe it was, never allowed 4.0 yards per rush in a season in their history, which is really incredible.
Which is insane, because if you allow 4.0 just itself, that's a really good run defense. That's wild to see, honestly.
Yeah. In the 2012 season, it actually came down to the last kneel. The Bengals won the last game of the season. The Ravens were already in the playoffs, and they knelt out on the last play and actually dropped them to 3.994 from just over 4. So it's kind of an interesting little thing. But now the Ravens at inside linebacker obviously have been strong too. So their hallmark of their defense really been able to stop the run with a 6-man box, and they've been very effective at that over their history.
Giants tried to do a lot of it this past season, but once Blake Martinez went down, it was tough, and that's why they went from one of the better teams to stopping the run. And Patrick Graham changed to a lot more too high looks, kind of with where the change with the league a little bit. So that's what my question is now he's joining a Giants team, which is going to have, like you said, you asked about the edge guys. They have Azeez Ojulari, who doesn't have the highest ceiling, and that's about it up front as far as pass rushers. Leonard Williams in the middle is pretty good, but and then their corners, they have two really good ones in James Bradbury and Adoree Jackson, but I don't think anyone describes those guys as man-to-man or press-man corners. How do you see Wink adjusting to some more zone-type corners and right now an edge room that's really, really bottom of the league weak?
Yeah, it's not what the Ravens have had in terms of the Ravens very much built back to front with Peters and Humphrey at corner, even though obviously both those guys ended up getting hurt this year. So it's not quite the same. How has McKinney's development been? Because I'll tell you right now that he was a guy I loved in the draft, and he's the guy I wanted instead of Patrick Queen at 28.
Okay. See, I was very critical of him. He was hurt a lot of his rookie year, and then to start this season, he wasn't playing really well, but no one was talking about it because the deep safety doesn't show up on TV, they were playing a lot of quarters and he was blowing that. He left the middle open a few times, and then about 5-6 weeks in, it just started clicking for him, and he became the defensive player of the year for the Giants and really started playing with his instincts more and understanding, how to match pattern matching and things like that. So his development was one of the few bright spots for the Giants this past season.
Here's my question, because I loved him as a center fielder, even more than Delpit coming out of that draft. But does he play the overthrow well at the pro level? Meaning, when he brackets, does he bracket loose, or does he bracket like a guided missile heading for the wide receiver from behind, like bracket too close? So one way you have a higher interception rate. The other way you maybe get a few more passes defense by jarring the ball loose, but it's at the cost of turnovers.
They did a lot of too high stuff. Most of his turnovers were, like you said, those underneath ones, but there's a couple ones where he, like you said, he's playing loose and over the top. He kind of has done a good job of both, to be honest. He's been a pretty impressive player where, like you said, there's some safeties who are bam, bam, go, go, go. And then the other ones who maybe don't have the turnover plays, who are playing over the top more, but stopping some big plays. He kind of found that good mix of both this past year. He's been an impressive player. And I wasn't really the highest on him, honestly, coming out of Alabama.
Yeah. It's a shame. If we did a draft show and I could not hide my disdain for the pick very well. And we're on one of these video things. We never do video, but we did for this thing. And everybody's asking, Ken, are you all right? Kind of thing, pick and whatnot. But I really hated the Queen pick.
See, I like Patrick Queen. I'm getting better at the stress. I like Patrick Queen, and I thought he'd be a good fit for the Ravens, but it seems like he's, from what you said before the show, it hasn't been working. How much cover zero is Wink actually running? We watch it on, I watched them on prime time, and it seemed like they pulled it out a lot against the Ravens in that opening game of the year. How much is that him running it, and how much of it is just reputation at this point?
I think there's a little sum of both. I mean, he likes to put the inside linebackers in the box, but the Ravens' big weakness in terms of pass defense is right in the middle of the field with those inside linebackers. So he can't afford to play too much that is not, at least cover one. They probably did more of it in the past in 18, 19, and 20. Particularly when LJ Fort was on the field and they had a dime back in Clark in 19 that they really trusted. They haven't really had the good set of players since then. But it's one of the good things about Martindale, and this could play well with the Giants too, is he's not afraid to move the green dot to a safety if that's where it belongs. Okay. So it could be McKinney or could be a strong safety. And the reason is that he wants the full flexibility to get his inside linebackers off the field. And in Baltimore, there's a good reason for it, because they can't cover at all. Not only can they not cover, they have no ability to understand at all what's going on behind them. So they really are just not good. Josh Bynes is the only one who kind of does, and he's a limited physical player, older guy, obviously, in the league, and yet they brought him in twice in the last 3 years to fix their inside linebacker position when it was broken. So it's really kind of funny that they've had to rely on a guy like that. But But Martindale will want to get his inside linebackers off the field on a lot of plays. And I think in the coming year, this means the Ravens will play a lot of quarter. They played about 22 snaps of it or something this year. But a team like the Giants, I wouldn't be surprised if they take them both off and you see two safeties in there for some plays.
Okay. I'll finish off with this. Is there anything like with Wink that Giants fans should know that, like only from a Ravens point of view, and especially you doing a film study that like most people want to be able to key in on?
It's the extreme packages come around. I mean, a lot of people call NASCAR. I like to kind of differentiate a little bit, but Wink is the first Ravens defensive coordinator who ever put 4 outside linebackers on the field at the same time. And in fact, he put 5 outside linebackers on the field at one time for some plays in 2018. And he had this remarkable success with it, but only did it for 6 snaps. And then they brought it back in 2019. The Ravens, of course, very dominant defense, very dominant offense in terms of usually having the lead. They ended up playing 13.2% of their snaps with 4 outside linebackers and only 10.6% in their base defense. So that's the kind of extreme package, fit the situation. Obviously, you're fitting a lead too there. If you got a 25-point lead, you're comfortable, sending your 4 pass rushers out and letting them hunt down after down. But very, very extreme packages for very extreme circumstances. You see, the other thing too is that if a team is really good at 0-1 or 10 personnel and they really have a 4 good wide receivers, he has no problem putting 4 corners on the field in the dime package. But he also generally prefers to play a bigger dime, which is either 3 safeties and 3 corners, or with a quarter with 4 safeties and 3 corners.
Well, I'm taking notes listening to you right now. Look out for these 4 or 5 outside linebacker packages in my breakdowns film. Ken, where can people find you? And I really appreciate you coming on and giving us some time.
No problem. Happy to do it, Bobby. I'm on filmstudybaltimore.com is my website. Come on over there. There's all kinds of stuff about Martindale a whole season. I write a defensive article every week. Came out on Monday, a podcast to go with it. So if Giants fans want to look back and see what Wink did, all kinds of package specificity is in the article. All kinds of pass rush specificity, including the deception, would be the thing I think your listeners might have interest in.
Yeah, I'm going to tweet that out, and our listeners will eat that up. So, Ken, again, I appreciate you giving us a few minutes.
All right, take it easy, Bobby.
All right, thank you, Ken McCusick, for coming on the show. That's an episode. Justin, should we reveal who our Tuesday interview is going to be? Since there's not going to be any big enough news to kick this interview, right?
I kind of forgot about this, and I already edited it, and it's already ready. Yeah, let's do it. You do it.
It's an interview I'm kind of excited about, but Antonio Williams, the running back that we signed from the Bills, the first signing of the Joe Shane. He's a really interesting guy. We talked about NASCAR, we talked about gaming. Like he's an interesting guy. And a little flex. He said, some people had reached out to me, but I was waiting for you guys to reach out, which made me be like, number one.
I was like, that's really cool.
Versus the whole damn wolf. So it was actually a fun interview. I might try and link up with them in Daytona. I try not to bother people, but I might just bother them. And I think he's going to make the team, by the way. Like, I really do think he's going to make the team.
He said to bother him. What I like about an interview, when we laugh a lot in an interview, I think it's good. And we laughed a lot. So I'm excited for everybody to listen to it. And I'm excited for you to hear kind of what we talked about. It was a lot of football, good amount of football. And we even laughed about the football stuff too.
It was a fun player interview.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited for you all to hear.
If he was a better player, if he was a well-known player, people would be like lauding this interview. We're hyping it up too much. It's not that good, actually.
You know what? No, because now we're approaching the time of the year where, it's February, maybe you still have, some casual listeners in there, but now we're approaching the time of the year where news is going to start really slowing down, and the diehard listeners of Talking Giants are listening. And they're going to enjoy that interview the most.
We're hyping it up too much. It's not that good.
I thought it was very good.
It's a third string running back at best.
No, the interview
snap next year.
The interview was good. I'm not saying
to not hype it up. I'm trying to not hype it up. All right, and
let's
again,
get out of here.
It's we'll see you guys. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl. We'll see you next week. Enjoy your weekend. Love you guys. Until then, let's go Big Blue.